Awesome.
All right, Dylan, you're no.
That's cutting off your head.
Right here, it's cutting off your head.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like this much of it. You can only
Can you see the whole board?
No, not at all.
Yeah, we fixed
Fix it! Make it to where if you're sitting, make it to where you can see the whole board, and if they can see most of me, we're good.
Okay, that looks better.
I'm more concerned with this.
All right, hold on.
I really would prefer that it not
should be
see me,
good.
but- Okay, so we're dealing with dependent clauses in the last section, and I'm going to put it out there. For a lot of you, what we did yesterday will be the hardest part on the test. Okay, simple compound, that's not hard. Simple, compound, complex, compound, complex. Okay, some of us are good. Okay, so what I say all that to say, it gets, to me, the rest of the chapter is easier than what we've done thus far. So, all right, kinds of dependent clauses, and Dylan, and we're missing somebody else today? No, it's just Dylan. You're missing it, buddy. I know you can't help it, and I don't hold it against you at all. You're doing absolutely the right thing for you. But you can't see. Dylan! You're missing it. We've laughed a lot. Okay. See, I'm fun. Everybody's like, she's so serious. Not all the time. Not all the time. Okay. Adjective clauses. Adjective clauses. We have two kinds of dependent clauses we're going to discuss in this chapter specifically and point out and give you all the details about. Okay? The first of which, there are three kinds, but we don't have to get to the third one until next year. Okay? Specifically. This is the one that we had this one last year. Or yeah, y'all had this one last year. We did not do the one we're doing tomorrow last year, but it's not much harder than what we're doing today. Adjective clauses. These are dependent clauses. Okay? A dependent clause has what but can't what? What does a dependent clause have?
A subject or a verb, but it can't function as a whole sentence.
Good. 98% right. A subject and a verb. You're good. You're good. I'm not being, okay? I'm trying to be positive. But it has to have a subject and a verb to be a dependent clause. You may not be able to see me, you'll be all right. You hear me. To be a dependent clause. But because it's dependent, it can't stand alone. Okay? It's not a sentence. It's not a complete thought. Okay? You read it out loud and you go, because I didn't sleep much last night. Yes. You don't put a period on that. Okay? So it's a dependent clause. Specifically, it's a dependent clause, and because it's an adjective, adjective clauses must describe nouns or pronouns, just like a one-word adjective would, just like an adjectival prepositional phrase would. We talked about those earlier. Nouns or pronouns. Okay. So they describe nouns or pronouns. Something to help you here. This makes them a lot easier in my opinion. They generally, and really almost always, directly follow. Follow, because we're doing, right? Yeah. More than one. Directly follow the nouns, pronouns that they are modifying. Okay. Since they are adjective clauses, they're functioning like adjectives, What questions would you imagine that they might answer if we're trying to determine if it's an adjective clause versus tomorrow an adverb clause? What questions might an adjective clause answer?
Who or what?
No.
What kind? How many?
Good. Good. That whole group. Which one? What kind? How many? How much? And whose. These are our adjective questions. Adjectives, all one-word adjectives will answer one of these questions. Prepositional phrase adjectives, or adjectival prepositional phrases can answer any of these questions, but more often than not, we'll answer these first two. Pretty much all adjective clauses will answer one of those two. Okay, I'm not going to rule out the possibility. I'm sure there's one somewhere if I searched and thought about it hard enough that I could likely find that would answer one of these questions. But generally speaking, it's these. Okay, you're going to answer one of those questions. Now, we'll look at some examples of the adjective clauses, and specifically what I want to point out to you in the book, and I will write these on the board for you. But there are two ways that these adjective clauses start, or trigger words, if you will. These are the words that you want to look for to find, to locate your adjective clauses, okay? We have relative pronouns, called relative pronouns, okay? And they are who, whom, whose, which, and that. Okay, this one by far of those five. Machine is not paying attention. This by far is the most common. Okay. If you see this word very often, it's going to be starting an adjective clause, also called by some places, not in this book, but in other curriculum, they're often called relative clauses because they start with relative pronouns, because this word or the three words I'm about to talk to you about relate the whole clause back to the word it describes. For example, let me give you one here. Which one? Yeah. Oh, I didn't even plan this, but this is cool. Okay, we love you, and I miss you, and can't wait to have you back when it's good for y'all. Okay, dependent clause right in the middle. These are, in one aspect, often harder to identify if you're marking the clause than adverb clauses, which we'll talk about tomorrow. Adverb clauses often, not always, are set off by one comma if they're at the beginning of a sentence, or comma on either side if they're in the middle. These usually don't have commas, okay? So you got, that makes these words all that more important that you recognize these words, okay? That they could be likely are starting a dependent relative adjective clause, okay?
Those words can't start an independent clause, right?
They could.
Because you could say that, like, who's missing?
You could, absolutely you could. Yeah, absolutely you could. But in this sentence, it's not, okay? Good question. Yeah, especially, it's not likely that that one's going to start an independent clause. It could technically, but it's not very likely. All of these. This one not as much, but definitely who, whose, and which could start all kinds of independent clauses, okay? It's just not here. Whom you could, but it's kind of weird wording if you have a whom at the beginning of your sentence. It happens, but it's not nearly as common. Good question, good point. One other group of words, and then I want to discuss one more thing with you. We'll look at a couple examples in the book, and then I want you to have time to work on this. The other group, if it's not one of these five that starts your adjective clause, and I want to double check myself. Shouldn't have to after 15 years, but I want to tell you wrong. Yep. Yep. These are more likely. These are absolutely possible and are fairly common. Okay? The difference, the main difference in if you have a dependent clause that starts with one of these versus if you have a dependent clause which starts with one of these. Let me show you something. I'm going to compare this sentence to one more. Run out of room, y'all. Okay.
I have a quick question.
Yep.
These relative adverbs, you can't see those on the screen. Can you see? Because I feel like you might need to know those.
Thank you. Dylan, they're watching out for you. Take notes. Okay. Okay. So these are more common. Those are absolutely happening all the time, just not as much as these. Okay. Two dependent clauses. One started with the relative pronoun. One begun with the relative adverb. Let me show you the main difference between these two. Okay. And thank God you're not going to have to. You're going to have to know if it's a pronoun or an adverb. Okay. That's all you're going to have to know. You're not going to have to do what I'm about to do. The book actually suggests you do, but I'm not going to make you because I don't think it's that important to what we're doing, at least not at this level.
You want to switch it back so you can see me?
Somebody check me. I accidentally did something that I didn't mean to do, but that's okay. No, you don't gotta label sentence patterns, okay? And you're going, and some of you that know these well are saying, what the heck is BEADVL? Okay, because we haven't even discussed that. We don't hit it till 10th grade. There are two additional, for all of those of you that love them and really don't love them and hate them and find them difficult, buckle up next year. Okay, there are two more. And I'll just tell, I'm putting it out there, okay? Not to scare you, just let you know. And I'm sure I'll remind you next year when we start. The biggest jump of, I teach 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12 grammar, plus I teach the speech and creative writing class, so juniors get me twice. Biggest jump for me academically, and I've looked at the 7th grade book. 7th grade and 8th grade are not that much difference. I don't teach 7th. For all the grades I teach is by far 9th to 10th grade. Y'all are in class though. I'm much more, although they are an extremely bright class as a whole. The 10th graders this year, on that one note at least, got the short end of the stick, right? Because their last half of their grammar in 9th grade was online. Okay. These generally have sentence pattern functions. Okay? These just function as adverbs. They don't have a sentence pattern function. Don't worry about what that is. See me after class if you're just dying. Okay? Your sister would have. Mm-hmm. Just saying she's awesome. You're awesome too. Jayla is one of my favorite grammar students ever in 15 years. Because she's awesome, but not only is she really good at grammar, and it comes very naturally to her, she likes it.
I know, she's weird.
All right, watch it. Yeah, because that's somewhat unusual to have somebody as gifted as her that's just like, this is good stuff. And I'm like, woohoo. Okay, future English teacher perhaps. God knows. So that's your main difference there. Okay, any questions? Let's go over a couple sentences. No, good. Okay, so y'all have a couple. I mean, if you do, great. Bye, Dylan.
I am going back and watch this video.
You should. It'll be funny.